Welcome to the open question. Atheism, defined as the
Now with Cox Internet and Mobile, the price of your plan won't go up for 3 years, guaranteed.
argued for a prime mover, a necessary and perfect. Welcome to the open question. Atheism, defined as the absence of belief in gods or deities, is often viewed as a modern or Western phenomenon. However, its origins and development stretch across millennia, emerging in diverse cultures and philosophical traditions. Atheism is more than just the rejection of gods. It is a seemingly indifferent cosmos. In this video, its current expressions, exploring the interplay of philosophical cultural forms of atheism. The history of atheism begins not in opposition to religion, but in the natural curiosity of humans and the role of the gods in the natural world. In ancient India, the Carvaka school of thought, sometimes referred to as Lokayata, rejected the supernatural and advocated for a materialist worldview. Emerging around the 6th century BC, figures like Thales and Anaximander sought explanations for natural phenomena in terms of matter and natural laws, rather than attributing them to divine. Atheist by later philosophers due to his public rejection of religious beliefs and practices. Diagoras' atheism wasn't just intellectual. He argued that the gods were creations of human imagination, and religion served the political and social order rather than any divine purpose. Philosophical roots of atheism in ancient Greece and Rome. As Greek philosophy matured, skepticism about the gods grew. Socrates, though not an atheist himself, questioned the nature of the divine and the role of gods in human affairs. Socratic dialogue often centered on the idea that human beings should seek wisdom and moral virtue through reason rather than divine. Rationally ordered cosmos suggested that the gods were not as involved in the world as traditional mythologies claimed. He introduced the reality beyond the physical world. Plato's view of a detached, rational order of the cosmos laid the groundwork for later secular and atheistic philosophies. Prime mover, a necessary and perfect cause that set the universe in motion. Though this unmoved mover was not a personal god, Aristotle's philosophy would influence later theological arguments for God. However, Aristotle's conception of a divine principle was far removed from the gods of popular religious traditions, indicating an early shift in philosophical thinking toward abstract, impersonal forces rather than deities concerned with human affairs. In the Roman world, Lucretius, a 1st century BCE poet and philosopher, is perhaps the most prominent figure to articulate a form of atheism. His epic poem, De Rerum Natura, on the nature of things, put forward an atomic theory of the universe and rejected divine intervention. Lucretius argued that natural phenomena could be explained by the interactions of atoms, not by the whims of gods. His work provided a materialist and naturalistic view of the universe that was centuries ahead of its time. The decline of atheism in the Middle Ages. As the Roman Empire declined and Christianity became the dominant religious force in Europe, atheistic thought largely retreated into the shadows. The medieval period, which lasted from roughly the 5th to the 15th centuries, was dominated by theological systems, with the Catholic Church asserting strong control over intellectual and philosophical life. In this environment, questioning the existence of God or the divine order was considered heretical. However, there were still isolated figures who expressed ideas that challenged the religious worldview. The Islamic Golden Age, 8th to 13th centuries, saw some Muslim thinkers, like the philosopher al-Ma'ari, 973 to 1057, express agnostic and the idea of a divine creator. He rejected both Islamic teachings and the idea of an afterlife, preferring reason and rationality as guides for living. His works, including his poem The Epistle of Forgiveness, argued that human beings could find moral meaning in life without the need for religious doctrines. In medieval Christian Europe, philosophical debates often centered around the existence of God, but overt atheism was rare. Thomas Aquinas, the influential scholastic philosopher, argued for the existence of God through his famous 5 ways, a set of philosophical proofs for the existence of a rational, intelligent creator. His synthesis of faith and reason became a central tenet of Catholic theology. However, even Aquinas acknowledged that human reason could help us understand God's nature, paving the way for later thinkers to argue that religion was not necessary to explain the universe. The Renaissance and the seeds of modern secularism. The Renaissance 14th to 17th centuries brought about a revival of interest in classical Greek and Roman texts, including those of early skeptics and materialists. Thinkers began to challenge the authority of religious institutions and advocated for the use of reason and scientific observation to understand the world. Humanism, the intellectual movement that emphasized the dignity and potential of human beings, played a key role in fostering secular thought. Although most Renaissance thinkers were still religious, some, like the philosopher Michel de Montaigne, expressed doubts about the certainty of religious knowledge and divine intervention. Montaigne's essays questioned the reliability of human knowledge, including theological knowledge, suggesting that reason and critical thinking should be the basis for understanding life, rather than unquestioning belief in religious dogma. The Enlightenment of modern atheism. The Enlightenment of the 17th and 18th centuries marked a crucial turning point in the development of atheism. This period emphasized reason, individual rights, secular governance, and the rejection of superstition and religious dogma. Thinkers like Voltaire, Denis Diderot, and Baron de Holbach openly criticized religious beliefs and institutions, advocating for a world guided by reason and science. Voltaire, 1694-1778, was one of the most outspoken critics of the Catholic Church. In his writings, Voltaire mocked religious intolerance and the idea of a personal God who interferes in human affairs. He championed deism, a belief in a rational, impersonal God who created the universe and set it in motion but does not intervene in its workings. For Voltaire and other Enlightenment thinkers, the emphasis was on using reason and empirical evidence to understand the world, rather than relying on divine revelation. Diderot, 1713-1784, was the editor of the Encyclopédie, a monumental work that sought to compile all human knowledge while promoting secular and rationalist ideas. Diderot and his fellow encyclopedists saw religion as an obstacle to human progress, and often criticized it as a source of ignorance and tyranny. Baron de Holbach, 1723-1789, a French philosopher, was one of the earliest thinkers to articulate a clear atheistic worldview. In his work, The System of Nature, 1770, he argued that the universe operated entirely on natural laws, and that belief in God was a superstition that hindered human understanding. De Holbach's materialism was one of the most radical atheistic views of the time. The 19th century, the rise of science and the decline of religious authority. The 19th century brought the theory of evolution proposed by Charles Darwin in On the Origin of Species, 1859, offered a naturalistic explanation for the diversity of life, undermining the religious account of divine creation. Darwin's work provided evidence that species evolved through natural selection, a process that did not require divine intervention. Meanwhile, philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche, 1844-1900, declared that God is dead, a statement that reflected the decline of religious belief in the face of scientific and philosophical progress. Nietzsche saw the death of God as both a liberating opportunity for individuals to create their own values and a source of existential despair in a world devoid of transcendent meaning. Karl Marx, 1818-1883, in his work Critique of Hegel's Philosophy of Right, famously referred to religion as the opium of the people, arguing that it was a tool used by the ruling classes to pacify the masses and prevent revolutionary change. Marx's materialist philosophy sought to explain society and human behavior in terms of economic and social forces, without the need for religious explanations. The 20th century, atheism, and the rise of secularism. The 20th century saw the rise of both scientific atheism and political atheism. In the Soviet Union, atheism became a state-sponsored ideology as part of Marxist-Leninist doctrine. The government actively promoted atheism, closing religious institutions and promoting secularism in education, media, and culture. In the West, the decline of traditional religious belief and the rise of secularism became evident in the increasing number of people identifying as atheist or agnostic. Philosophers such as Bertrand Russell, 1872-1970, in his essay Why I Am Not a Christian, directly addressed the arguments for belief in God and presented a rational case for atheism. Russell was a vocal advocate for human reason and scientific inquiry as the best means of understanding the world. The 20th century also saw the emergence of existentialist atheism, as thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, 1905-1980, argued that in the absence of God, individuals are responsible for creating their own meaning and values. Sartre's philosophy suggested that the human experience is defined by freedom, choice, and responsibility, rather than divine guidance or predestination.
You've dreamed up some delicious Domino's pizzas, like the viral pizza.
This is a perfect pizza.
And we want to see more, so we're bringing back Domino's best deal ever.
The 21st century, new atheism and secular humanism. The 21st century has seen the rise of the new atheism movement, led by figures like Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and Daniel Dennett. These thinkers advocate for a strong rejection of religious belief, particularly fundamentalist religions, and emphasize the importance of scientific skepticism and rational thought. Dawkins' The God Delusion 2006 became a bestseller, challenging the existence of God and criticizing the role of religion in politics and society. At the same time, secular humanism has gained prominence as an ethical framework for atheists. Secular humanism emphasizes human rights, reason, and compassion without the need for religious belief. Humanist organizations worldwide advocate for the separation of church and state, scientific inquiry, and ethical living based on human well-being. The continuing evolution of atheism. Atheism has evolved from ancient skepticism to a complex and varied movement that spans the fields of philosophy, science, and politics. Its development has been shaped by the rise of reason, the scientific revolution, the critique of religious authority, and the quest for human understanding. Today, atheism remains a powerful force for intellectual and cultural progress, continuing to challenge traditional beliefs and to promote a worldview rooted in evidence, reason, and human flourishing. As societies around the world become more secular, and as scientific understanding continues to advance, atheism's influence will undoubtedly continue to grow. In a world where the mysteries of the universe remain, atheism provides a framework for seeking knowledge and meaning without the need for divine intervention. It is and will remain an essential part of the ongoing intellectual journey of humankind. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the topics that shape our world.